We are recording.
Voila. All righty. So welcome everybody to our Friday fun club here.
We can't have wine till we're done.
That's right. Voila.
Wait, but if we're French, I don't know.
That's right. Exactly. You can't have a Friday night without a glass of wine. Okay, so the context of our student writing sample, we're going to use two, because we had a super small sample, we're going to use two smaller samples. We have one that is an Arabic speaker, eighth grader. On the first one we're going to discuss. And then on the second one, which is question number 6 from Megan's sample on, and I'm trying to find that one, Byzantine, right, Megan?
She's from the Philippines, and so she speaks Tagalog.
Okay. Oh yeah, right. Okay. And how? And she's what grade?
She is she's a sophomore, and the Arabic speaker is a 8th grader.
8th grader.
Okay.
Is that
correct?
right?
8th grader.
Eighth?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
8th grade is correct.
Okay. So that sounds good. So let's see, Megan, you're the grammarian, right?
No, I'm the note
I'm
taker.
sorry. Rachel, you're the
I'm the
grammarian.
grammarian.
So
Yeah.
do you want to kind of
So
just
do we
give
want
us
to?
a quick overview of our grammar point adjectives and adverbs, and anything if you're aware of typical ELL errors in this context?
Yeah. So I feel like some of the adjective things we should be aware of or that are difficult are like indefinite articles, definite articles. Am I on the right part? Yeah. And so like possessive adjectives. Demonstrative adjective, quantity adjectives. I feel like that comes up a lot with ESL students that we even talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
And descriptive adjectives. Yeah, that those are some of the main points that we kind of should be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And then with adverbs of manner, adverbs of frequency, adverbs of degree. So like that's a big one too, of almost, hardly, extremely, very. I think we had talked about that, that we'll notice that in one of the samples, if that's the sample we were talking about too, as very came up a lot too. Adverbs of place, adverbs of time. So I think those are some of the main areas that we'll definitely notice, even though they're short samples too. So
Right. The other thing I know about adverbs working in 2 different languages is adverb placement, at least between French and English, is very different. So syntax has a problem with adverb placement because the kids always want to put the adverb where it falls in their native language, and it doesn't necessarily fall, with respect to the verb, it doesn't fall in the same place in the sentence. So I think word order and adverb placement is also probably something that we're going to want to look at as well.
Right.
definitely. So which one did we say we wanted to look at first?
Let's go ahead and look at the sample that you submitted, the little girl writing about her favorite park.
Okay, perfect.
Does that work? So, the other thing I wanted to add about adjectives, I can tell you, I thought I knew grammar pretty well, but I did not realize that relative clauses were considered adjective clauses.
I'm still a little confused about what that is.
So, yeah, when they talked about, let's see if I can find that page.
I think it's on page 231. Like, I read it and I was like...
Yep, you're exactly right. So yeah, when you have a clause that starts with who, whom, which, or that modifies the subject, basically, they consider that an adjective clause. I did not know that. I did not realize that. And the other thing then last week that you brought up, and I didn't find it in the Folse book, but you had looked it up last week, Megan, we'll run into it in this text, is the idea of having an adjective phrase. Remember when we talked about 10 years old?
Yes.
An adjective phrase modifying the girl.
Right.
So in my mind, I guess I really had to expand my sense of what adjectives are. It's way more than just a word that you use to describe.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
Especially with like the adverbs too. I just always think of that genre as like LY, and that's it. You know, like I don't think I ever thought of like degrees of it. All that too.
Right.
It is amazing. Like how many breakdowns there are of it too.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. So I felt like I said, I feel like I'm pretty decent with grammar, but this this chapter on adjectives, it made me realize I have a lot to learn.
Right.
We want to pull out the can-do descriptors. We'll take a look at the little park text.
Yeah, that sounds good. Can do descriptors.
And the can-do descriptors, they're not by level. There's just the one. Is that right?
Oh, that makes it easier.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Can do.
I think can do is by
No,
level.
those are by grades.
Yeah.
Oh, that is right. The can do. Those are the key. Is that the key use?
Yes.
Key use of. Okay, hold on. Okay, so 6 to 8. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the writing one. Correct.
Yes.
Key use of recount.
Yeah.
Key use of explain. So I would say, is she recounting or explaining in this small sample? She's not arguing.
I think, let's see.
I think she's recounting. She's telling us something about her. We could look at both.
For sure.
She's explaining why she likes the park.
Yeah, and she's been there before, but she's not there right now.
Right. So I think we can look at the second and third pages of this one. Key use of recount in writing. Okay. Bottom of in my case, it's the back of the first page. And then key use of explain. And that would be on page 7.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So let's look at key use of recount first. So on page 5, where she's at with this text. Producing short paragraphs with main idea and some detail.
Go.
That was my gut thought too. Yeah, because it's not too much detail, but some.
Right. And she's not, well, I guess she does have word banks a little bit in the recount, completing sentences using word banks, because it starts up there at the top with, when I am there, I've been going to the park since I was.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of word support there too also, which would put her more in the emerging category. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Producing statements related to main ideas on familiar topics in home language and English. So going to parks would apply to both languages. She's probably, I would say, in recounting, I would put her probably emerging and moving to developing.
Yeah, I would probably.
You know what I've noticed?
Go for it.
So much too is it's so hard with this particular student. She is like so shy too, that I've just been thinking lately too how much that might impact access scores and things too. Like getting off topic for a second though, is that she is so shy that I feel like that impacts her writing and speaking, and I feel like her listening so strong with like a lot of my students, but I do feel like it's hard because she is so smart and mature, but I feel like because she's so shy, and even in her writing sometimes that it skews it as well. You know, like I would almost think from knowing her it's more developing, but when you read the writing, it is almost, some of it's more emerging, huh?
Okay.
That's interesting. And also that shyness is going to come out in the productive skills, reading and writing.
That's true.
Not listening.
Yeah.
I mean, writing and speaking. Whereas they might be higher in their receptive skills because there's no risk in the receptive skills.
Right.
So that affective filter is way down.
Mm-hmm.
So in her reading and writing, she's definitely in the emerging. Is that what we're saying? Because she's having to, no, in the writing, writing and speaking.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this sample supports emerging, moving towards developing. And I think that's interesting because you know her, you have a different sense of her. I think that's worth noting in the notes.
Yeah.
No, I do think so too.
So I guess what I'm just a little bit confused on is in the notes, we're looking at just her writing, correct? So that's key use, recount, writing.
Yeah.
But Rachel, you're saying it's when you talk to her that she's moving into the developing, or no?
Or just like I feel like with her listening and like maturity, just like that world knowledge part, you know, that we've talked about, I feel like she has more depth. But I do think when it comes to writing, like we said, that it is almost, emerging, going into developing. But I just thought it was kind of important to note, like, since we've been talking about that kind of like world knowledge part too.
I might even like make a note of that this is for her writing, but in her speaking, she actually really is solidly in developing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think the other important component of that is just the whole relationship thing with the teacher is just knowing that the more you know about the student, I think the better you're able to assess them rather than just to put them on a chart.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just a plug for that, creating that environment where you know your students.
Right.
All right. Do we want to look at explain? So that would be on page 7. Again, we're just going to look at writing and explain.
Yes. Okay. So
connecting short sentences, comparing illustrated descriptions of content-related concepts would be that emerging section.
Right.
Comparing and contrasting. She doesn't compare and contrast anything, does she?
No, it doesn't really.
Descriptive enough? No.
Although that task doesn't really require it, but I think in the next bullet, producing descriptive paragraphs around a central idea, this is barely a paragraph. So I think, again, I would put her kind of in that same category. Definitely in emerging and starting to move towards developing, but she's not there yet.
Mm-hmm. No, I think so too.
Okay. Because of the length that goes into it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Voila. Okay, so let me look at what our next one is. Okay. Speaking, reading, and writing rubric. So let's pull the reading and writing rubric. Ladies, we're just blazing through. We learned some things from last week, right?
I know.
I know, we're learning, right?
Yes, by the time we get done, we'll have this down.
Yeah.
I know it.
Okay, writing rubric.
And I'm grading papers this weekend, so I am thinking, I need to send out more samples. So just to know, too, that's a good thing. We'll have more things coming.
I have a couple things, too, from some high school, from some of my colleagues that have the few ELLs we have in their classroom. And so I may have a couple, too. But I think I'm going to really look at them to see if they lend themselves. I'll look at our next categories and look at my samples very carefully and see which concepts they lend themselves to.
So this is the one that says figure 5K? Is that the one that?
I have 5L. It looks like this.
5L.
Yeah,
oh, okay. Yeah, when you scroll down. Yeah.
Because we're just looking at the writing side of things. I'm thinking she's falling at like a 2 level because she has phrases, she has short sentences and they have a varying amount of text, but her organization is a little bit, like it flows, but it's just, I don't think it's at that developing level of expanded sentences yet.
Right.
But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
Especially when she was given the prompts, like we talked about too, like if she hadn't had that extra support, it would have been interesting too if it was even like between entering the beginning, you know?
Right.
But
yeah, the support with the prompts at the top, I think, helped her come up with what she did.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
How about vocab usage? So the first one we decided she's beginning in linguistic complexity, right?
Yes.
Column 1. Okay.
She's definitely using specific language because she's able to talk about the park. So that's kind of in a more developing region.
Often I go passive the times. Let's see. Lay there when it is time for break.
Yeah, I don't actually think that she uses that like expansive of vocabulary yet.
Right. I think she's I think she's beginning in vocabulary. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, especially for the fact that I keep forgetting she's like in 8th grade. I keep thinking it's elementary.
I know.
Yeah. Bless her heart. She's, she'll get there.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're saying beginning, especially because of the grade level that we're matching it with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that, just the vocabulary is pretty basic. And then that's a different theme, but like the bears, just some of those like little issues, I think, too.
Right.
If we look at language control, I have a question. I was 10 years old. Let's see. Since I was 10 years old, I went to school there and play there when it is time for break. Oh, okay. So there must be a school and a park together.
Ah.
My favorite park is John. Okay, I go. I can't really make sense of the next part. To pass the time?
I go. I think she put I go is most of the time, right?
Oh, is most of the time.
Most, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing a P there instead of an M, but that might be just me.
No, it is most for sure. So, yeah, my favorite park is John. Whatever. I can't read that. I go is most of the time. So that's pretty jumbled right there.
Right. So I think when you're looking at language control, generally comprehensible when text is adapted from model or source text, or when original text is limited to simple text, comprehensibility may be often impeded by errors. I feel like that's a 2 there.
Yeah, I agree.
There's 4 lines and I struggle to understand a couple of them. So I think she's a 2 all the way across.
Yeah, definitely.
I would agree.
Yeah, I'm copying that down. I go.
Right.
Another interesting thing for context too, some of these papers are papers that I found from before I came. So it was like substitutes as well. So like I feel like she's capable of a little more too, but it is interesting, like that context of like, this might have been done for a different teacher in the school before I was hired,
Yep.
But it is, I think she was definitely giving effort, but yeah, it is interesting to think about all those layers. Like, what is her home language and all that stuff for sure.
Well, then, and you think about that, if they're not doing well on their test day for whatever reason, if their motivation isn't there or if they aren't feeling well or whatever, then we make an assessment about their ability based on that sample that day. Yeah. It may or may not be very authentic for what they're really capable of doing.
Right.
Okay. So we're good with that one then, as far as placing her, correct?
Placing her, yes. Now we just have to go through the grammar errors that are related to the grammar point for this week. So that would be more Rachel kind of letting us know. Well, obviously us jumping in, but
right.
Yeah. So let's see. Often would that fall under our grammar point? Does she use often well?
The placement of the adverb. That was the example I was thinking of. I often go.
Yeah.
I go. So she's jumbling her verb placement with with her adverb.
Right.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the things that like jumps out very clearly. Let's see. And then the concept of most of the time, I feel like that kind of works, except the is most of the time, huh?
Yeah,
like
right. Well, and then I also think if you were sitting and talking with this child about this writing, you would kind of want to stress that you have often, which means a lot, most of the time, which also means basically the same thing. You'd probably want to say, I go there often, or I go there most of the time. But it's it's redundant to put both items in the same sentence.
Totally. No, definitely.
So it's an adverb. It's a frequency issue.
Yeah. When it is.
Nice. Okay.
Break.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything else that stuck out to you guys from? I'm trying to think when she talks about time at the end. Is that any like adverb, adjective?
Let's see. When it is time.
Things or not really?
I think that one's okay. The one that I want to look at is how she says when I was 10 years old. She says, when I was 10 year, I went.
Yeah. Right.
So that's an idiomatic expression, but I tried to find it in the book, but I think, Megan, you had referred to it earlier. I would call that an adjective phrase.
An adjective
phrase. Clause,
yeah.
Because it's not a clause because it doesn't have a subject and a verb, but it is a phrase that modifies her.
So an adjective phrase.
I was short, I was 10 years old. So it's a phrase of 10 years old, 3 words that modifies her. So I would call that an adjective phrase.
Yeah, that's what we actually looked up last week, and we found that too.
Right. So it's I think, so we have 2 things going on here. We have the difference in the way we talk about age, because that's an idiom in many languages. It differs from language to language, I think. So it's an adjective phrase. It's also an idiom that just needs to be memorized.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So that's what I found in that text. Does anyone, is there?
No, I think that's, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's the case, then why don't we talk for a moment about next steps on this text?
Yeah, how we could support her, right?
Right.
Well, I think that you kind of just hit one of the nails on the head, Jane, with the idiom phrase of the 10-year-old. It's just something that you have to memorize.
Right.
So for English, this is just how we say it. And maybe even connecting it back to her in Arabic, how would you translate that? Like, I'd have her maybe write it out in Arabic, and then I would ask her,
that's a great point,
correctly translate that for me.
Exactly. Like, I agree.
Exact sentence. And then just say, I hear you. I think it's totally valid, but we just do it funny here.
Yep.
And then almost like it goes back to me for like how you learn vocabulary really effectively from like some of our other classes, is that you almost like write it, draw a picture. So I almost imagine her like drawing a picture of when she was 10 years old, and like labeling that to like then just use your brain in a different way, that you're like drawing a picture. And then I think I talked about this last week too, if there was opportunities, because this is going to be a problem even with Spanish speakers, I feel like too, to like act it out. Like, oh, right now as I'm how many years old? Oh, and when I was 1 year old, like having just like practice by like acting it out. If there was like a way to draw it, just like using those different elements too, almost.
Right.
This is what I love to do as a language teacher, so bear with me for a second. I'm going to show you an example of what, if I saw this and I'm a language teacher, this is the activity I would have my kids do.
Great.
So I have them take scratch paper and make a chart. So the chart, if you can see it, says a person, age, and then one fact, and then a sentence. So you have kind of a
I love that.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So what I would do at that point then is I would have them pick 3 people in their life: a cousin, a sister, a baby brother, a mom, I don't care. And they would put those people's names in the name column. And in the age column, they would put their age. And then in the one fact column, they'd put likes cats, lives in New York. Just a little, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
And so then what they would do, this is kind of getting at another aspect of the adjective. It goes back to what we were talking about, adjective clauses. So Georgia, my cousin Georgia, and then 12 likes cats. So they would have this chart of just like 9 bits of information. And then we would create a sentence. My cousin Georgia, who is 12 years old, likes cats. My brother Benjamin, who is 6 months old, is little. Do you know what I'm saying?
I love that on so many levels. Yeah.
So they're every kid is creating sentences that follow the pattern, but they're all creating sentences about people they care about.
Yeah.
I think that's huge, especially if you think of the majority of English language learners who might be Spanish speaking and how integral that family component is. Like, I think that's Yeah, that's huge. That's really cool. I like that.
So what I envision then would be for them to just take a piece of copy paper and cut it into 4 quadrants, and they put the person's name, the 4 people, say they did 4 people, their names, and then they write their sentence. My cousin Georgia is 12 years. My cousin Georgia is 12 years old. She likes cats, or they could do it in different ways, but we're going to get that 12 years old. 6 months old. We're going to get that structure in there.
Yeah.
So then they have their poster with their 4 people in their life and sentences about their age and something about them that they like.
I love it. I think that's great. That's a great strategy.
And then
I wonder if you could almost. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. They could share it like we saw in the video of the lesson. Then they get together with their friends, a classmate, and they read their sentences to their friends.
My thought too is
10
you
minutes
almost.
It says.
Okay.
Okay.
My
cool.
thought too is you almost require one of those boxes to be a teacher example and talk about somebody who's 1 year old, so that you don't miss that differentiation too.
I like that. 1 year old. Yeah, I think that's good. You could actually start with a sample box where everyone does the same box at the top, and then everybody writes the same sentence. So that's what as a language teacher, that's what I would do with that concept.
Cool.
Okay.
The beauty of that is that it's a scratch paper activity. You don't have to photocopy anything in advance. You write it up on the projector or on the board. The kids just write their own. And then also when we're talking about the practice through talking and that kind of thing. So you think about how many times they've hit this concept. They've written their 4 sentences, and then they've read it to their friends, so they hit it 4 more times when they read it to their friends. They hear their friends' sentences, so they've hit it 4 more times. So in a very short period of time, they've written, heard, or spoken this structure of age 12 times.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That's absolutely huge. So.
And then you could almost for that due now the next day or something, if you guys do that kind of thing in your school, test them again on it in some way to make sure, hey, do I have to reteach this, or did they get it down, Yeah,
absolutely.
Right. And so this is what I do, stand-up drills in my class where all the kids stand up and they have to say a quick little sentence at the beginning of class just to kind of get their blood flowing. So then my stand-up drill with this would be, give me 1 sentence about someone in your family or a friend or family member, and tell me about their age. My brother is 7 years old. They sit down. My sister is 16 years old. They sit down. Do you know what I mean? So then if you have a class of 20 kids, they hear it 20 more times the next day at the beginning of class, and it takes 2 minutes.
Awesome.
So that's what I think that could be a next step with that concept of age.
Yeah, that's great.
As far as the placement of the adverb, any ideas on that one? I often go maybe a slot, structured activity like that. I was a little less confident with how to do that one because I'm not really good at that. My kids make adverb placement errors all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think a slot would work. Practicing just what adverbs are, what they look like. I have a hard time remembering that, something like early would be an adverb or whatnot.
Right.
Me too.
You can take those adjectives of frequency. I often, you could take maybe 3 or 4 adjectives of frequency and maybe construct something where they're using the different adjective. I'm sorry, I said adjective. I meant adverb.
I was just so thrown off. I was like, I did these notes all wrong.
No. I'm sorry. I totally misspoke.
I know how we use them some. I feel like talking about routines and stuff too. If students go through this is a routine I have, and using those words, I feel like we did that earlier in the semester. Maybe the students did before I came, but I remember kind of looking back at some paperwork and seeing that kind of be effective,
Yeah, I like that actually. I often go to my grandparents on the weekend. I usually get up at 7 o'clock. Maybe you could have 3 or 4 adverbs of frequency and then some sentences that lend themselves to that are about their life.
Yeah.
And then they create some sentences that tell some things they often, frequently, usually do, or rarely. You could put rarely in also.
Rarely.
Yeah.
Nice. I've got lots of notes here to be able to type up. This is good. I can extrapolate this.
And you're still good to record each time, Megan, too, since you're such an expert.
It's not hard. I'll just sit here. It takes like 20 minutes to upload it. It's such a pain in the butt, but I'll just type this up while it's no problem.
Well, thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rachel, I don't know if you were here when I apologized. I was supposed to upload the writing sample last week as a note taker. That's totally on me. I did not realize that was part of my notes.
No, you're fine. And I felt bad because I did it in that weird picture format. I was like thinking of like in the future I need to probably scan them because I don't know how well they always show up too. So feel like we're learning something each time. So
we are
we're already in better grooves.
We definitely are.
Totally. Let me look at my
next week should we review our rules too? Let's see what
yeah, remind me, I forget.
Yeah, I have that page too. Next week we're doing conjunctions and prepositions, and Megan, you're the grammarian, and I'm the note taker, and Rachel, you're the director.
Okay, perfect. So as I'm grading this weekend, I'll find some more good ones too. So.
Conjunctions and prepositions, and we can glance through the samples too that we have now because we're getting a little bit of a collection.
Yeah.
Of samples. I'll glance through. If I see one that really is like, oh, this is a good one, I'll let you know earlier rather than later because I was pretty late on this one. Do we want to do the same time? What works on this? Does this time work?
It works again.
Yeah,
6 o'clock was better for me than 5:15.
Yes, me too.
Yes, way better.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I could do it any day next week that time. So whatever works for people.
Fridays just kind of work. I don't know if that's all right for everyone else.
Yeah, that's fine. That gives us time to really like take it all in too, you know.
It also like stops me from going to happy hour, which is kind of a good thing. Then you save money. And all my friends are like, happy hour. And I'm like, I can't, I have class.
That's awesome.
I told my students I had a meeting tonight, and I said, guess what my meeting's about? It's about adjectives and adverbs. I'm going to an adjective and adverb meeting at 6 o'clock on a Friday night. And they're like, Madame, you have a pathetic life.
That's
awesome. I like how we kind of texted or emailed like anything we noticed off the bat too. I think that's a good idea going forward for us too, especially as some of these things get more complex that we don't know there's so many layers to them. I think it's nice when we already kind of pinpoint some of the issues. I think it's cool.
Yeah, Jane, you telling me that the note catcher, I wasn't going to do it. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I started that, and I know that stuff. I've been studying that stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, if this was my first trip through this, I would be overwhelmed.
Yeah,
cool.
Much better. So.
Okay, so
I know I haven't taken the grammar quiz for this week yet. I'm probably going to cry this week.
It wasn't too bad. The one from last week was that stupid one about James's like friend or whatever. I got that one wrong. I was like, there's no way.
How about the mathematics one? Oh my gosh.
The only reason I got that right is because I went on a date that past week with a British guy, and he was like, why don't you say maths? And I was like, so that's why.
That's awesome.
I'm just like, I was ready to argue that one. I did actually argue that one, but anyway, whatever. Sometimes you just say whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I think I got the math one wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely missed that.
Well, have a great weekend, ladies.
Oh, you too. Bye.
Thanks for being such good teammates. This is fun.
Oh yeah, this is good.
Yeah, y'all too. Bye.
Bye.
Right, have a good one. Bye.